I'm like huddled up in my bedroom. My roommate's got the living room, so I was like, I'm taking this call from my bed. So it's a little embarrassing. I usually have a couple books. I have like a fun read and like a real read, right? So Dr. Mark Hyman came out with his new book.
Yeah, I've actually the food. What's it called?
Yeah,
Um,
it's like what the heck should we eat?
yeah,
Food?
yeah, that one. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm
Okay.
chipping away
Yeah.
at that one. And then I like the Bachelor Bachelorette series guiltily. And one of the girls came out with a new book, Andy Dorfman's book, Single State of Mind. So I'm also, that's my like pleasure read and then like things to learn about read. So
Cool. So, yeah, well, it's nice to sort of put a face to the name. We've heard a lot about you from Umbe, which is cool. He's like,
likewise,
yeah,
likewise.
that's
Speaks
cool.
very highly of the two of you.
That's cool, and you
That's it.
too, and you too. And he's
Yeah,
like,
likewise.
he just says, he says you'll have a great conversation with Erin. You must really try get in touch and stuff. So that's
Love
cool.
it.
That was legend chat. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed it. I'm super glad that Umbi and that Umbi put us in contact. Really
Yeah.
cool, man.
I know you guys are awesome, doing big things. It's been fun following the podcast. So happy for
Cool
y'all.
stuff.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Cool. Have a good week and have a good sleep tonight.
Have a good week. Chat to you
Thanks.
soon.
See you later.
Bye, y'all.
Cheers.
Bye. Greg, how you doing, my man? How's it going?
Yeah, pretty darn good, my man. How about you? How's your day gotten off to a good start? Has it gotten off to a good start there? You having a good morning?
Yeah, really good, thank you. I went outside this morning. I did a little run. I also did a little bit of cardio at the gym and just took in everything that the kind of, I don't know, the world had to offer, like the cool noises of the birds singing and checking out the boats on the Thames. It was just a nice start to the day.
Thing is coming alive a little bit there again now, slowly but surely.
Yeah, slowly.
After the
exactly.
deep freeze.
Yeah, it's been freezing, and it's even though it's like still not even getting above 10 degrees, it feels like it's summer compared to what it was.
When you hit those double digits, then it's like celebration.
Yeah. I think this week we're going to be hitting it every day, which is great.
Nice. So what have you been up to other than exercising?
Well, this week was actually quite a big week for me in terms of I have now been out of my ex-job as a banker for 1 year, which is cool. So almost a year to the day I left to go to India, which was, really, really cool. And I basically went out there to do my yoga teacher training and meditation teacher training, which was just outstanding. And I guess off the back of that, this year I've been working on setting up my own sort of health and fitness business. It's called Fit Ethos, and it's an element of a few different things, but mostly focused around sort of holistic coaching, also with an element of executive coaching. So I'm really looking forward to sort of like that growing now and myself creating a business out of that, because the first year has all been about learning and upskilling basically. Yeah, so it's a cool one. It's quite a nice milestone to have that year off now. And
That's massive.
How about you, man? What do you basically do for a day job? It's nice for, I guess, the listeners to hear that.
Yeah, we've actually, we had this chat and we haven't actually discussed it much. And first of all, seeing you grow this last year has been awesome. You've just done so much cool stuff. Your chef's course and executive coaching, the yoga. I've actually lost track almost, the Ultra MBA.
Thanks.
So it's been awesome, man. And I've kind of been learning quite a lot vicariously, through you. And yes, it's awesome, man. So congratulations, first of all, 1 year out of the job, my man. Good job.
No, thank you, bud. I appreciate it.
So for me, my last year has been interesting. I mean, moved from Netherlands to Australia. That was a biggie. Been pretty awesome though. I practice as a chiropractor on the Gold Coast, and it really is one of the most beautiful places probably in the world, great weather, great people, and help people with their health and get them feeling great again. So, if there's people out there, they're interested to find out more about what I do, just get hold of me, just like what Gareth said. So, but what this sort of leads into is that both of us have got, things that we're busy with, and we're busy with this podcast, which initially sort of started out as sort of a hobby or something we really wanted to do, but it could grow into something else and something bigger, which we'd love it to do. And it brings us to an idea of sort of multiple streams of income. And the amazing guest we chatted to this week, Erin Bailey, knows all about that, hey?
Yeah, she does for sure. First of all, Erin is a fantastic young lady and has achieved a lot in her sort of short space of time. I think she's 26 years old, and she works as a fitness instructor, as well as helping businesses on their digital offerings, and she also works as a model, and makes all these different streams of income. I'm sure I've missed one, but it's really fascinating, and like how things have developed in this kind of modern world. You don't just have that one job anymore, and you're sort of tied to that. You are able to have many things, and I think it's really cool because it actually keeps you really interested in what you do, because it's so diverse and there's just different things going on.
Yeah, 100%. And, she mentions during the chat that, it's sort of a strange story that she has to get multiple streams of income. But she also says at the same time, it's becoming less strange. This is just sort of the way of the future, collaboration, doing multiple things. And it's really exciting because it opens a lot of doors for a lot of people, and it levels a lot of the playing field for everybody, The chat was really interesting from that aspect. But also one of the more harrowing stories, or one of the things that sort of led us to the point of knowing where she's at, was her blog posts. And she, one of her blog posts actually went viral. And it was quite a sort of a scary and sad story that unfortunately happened, which led to her blog post going viral, hey?
Yeah, it was. And that blog post is actually around, I guess, guys basically just not being respectful for women, and wolf whistling and calling them out and saying things that they want to do to them in public, which is really kind of crossing the line, and it's something that I think needs to be taught from a young age, like how to properly behave in public, how to respect women, and somehow things need to change, and someone needs to take ownership of it, eh, Craig?
Yeah, totally. It's like it's such a complicated thing because where does it all begin? Is it a level of maturity thing? Is it a understanding thing? And you and I and Erin had this discussion during our chat, and I think there's still something to be said, open discussion around this topic, because it's not clear what the right way is to stop this and to prevent this happening in the future. One thing is certain is that it's everybody's responsibility, and it's something that should be taken very seriously. And hopefully, as a human race together, we can, sort of find solutions that we can really have this equality that we all deserve. So I think Erin really helps us understand a real important aspect of this, and I think this is also a good time to hear what makes Erin Bailey ridiculously human.
Cool stuff. Hello there, Erin Bailey
Hello.
from Boston, Massachusetts. How are you today?
I'm good. How's it going?
Yeah, we're really good, thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, thanks a lot for joining us on the Ridiculously Human podcast. It's great to have you on as a guest.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, good. How's things in Boston on the weekend? How's it been for you?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Been a fun weekend. Yeah. One of the first weekends I've been in Boston for a while now. So nice to see some friends, get some workouts in, grocery shop like a real human. So yeah, nice to be in routine this weekend.
Yeah, because you've been gallivanting a fair bit, haven't you?
Been all over the place. Yeah. Been in LA a lot. And then weekend trips was in Portland, Maine with my roommates, was down in DC with family. Yeah, this is like one of the first weekends of the year I've been in Boston, which is insane.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. All over the place.
That's
Just how I like it though. So
yeah, it's a good busy.
Onto a podcast.
It's worked out well.
Yeah, and how do you find it like having, I guess, sort of two first names? Because I know with my name Gareth Martin, like people often always call me Martin, and I'm like, no, my name is Gareth. Do you get the same?
I get it a lot through like through Instagram, because my Instagram is E Bailey, so I think people like ignore the E and they just think I'm Bailey. So I get that a lot. Or I get people's dogs. A lot of people name their dogs Bailey.
Really?
So they're like, yeah, I guess. And so like, oh, my dog's name is Bailey. And I'm like,
no way.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah, like, what do you say to that?
Yeah, I know, exactly. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I'm like, nice.
Yeah,
cool
thanks.
dog.
Yeah.
What kind of dog do you have?
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. And but you haven't you basically haven't always lived in Boston, have you? You've been up there for a couple. How many years now is it?
Almost 5, 4.5, going on 5.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, from North Carolina, from Asheville. Grew up in Asheville, which is on the western side of North Carolina in the mountains. And then went to school in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is on the beach.
Yeah.
So hit both sides of North Carolina, and then moved up here after I graduated, and have just been here ever since. So yeah, a little bit longer than I expected.
And you still have a few of your North Carolina like words and sort of sayings and stuff. Like when we were chatting to you before, you're like, "Hey y'all," and
I know.
which is so cool.
It's so funny because I think I actually like developed y'all living up here rather than down in North Carolina.
No
like
ways.
I realized, yeah, when I moved up here, everyone was like expecting an accent, and I don't have much of a Southern accent. But I realized when people find out I was from the South, they were nicer to me. So I started like saying y'all up here,
I developed
like
this.
automatically made the connection. And so now I like people at home are like, "What? Who are you?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like, making more Southern than I'm worth.
So it's interesting how those like subtle like language cues and stuff like that develop when you're living in different places. I think you always pick them up, hey, like that. It's weird that you became more Southern over there.
Yeah, I know. I like did the opposite. I'm like holding strong to my roots now.
Yeah.
How was it living at the beach when were you a bit of a beach person at the time, or?
It was the best. I was a total beach bum.
Yeah.
My family like wasn't a beach family growing up. Like because we lived in the mountains, we always went like camping and hiking and like rafting and whatever. And so we never did like the week-long beach vacations. I feel like a lot of my friends did. And so for college, I was like, what a good opportunity. I could just like live at the beach for 4 years and, have that experience. And it was awesome. Our school was literally like a mile from the beach. And so it was so close. So yeah, it was so nice. And now I'm in Boston and it's freaking cold up here all the time. I'm like ready to move back to the beach. That's like going to be my next move for sure. So
yeah, for sure.
Where are you thinking?
I think LA is next.
Cool. Is that because you have like some idea of stuff out there, or are you possibly?
Yeah, I feel like for the past few years, I keep like joking that I was going to live in LA, and my mom is like freaking out because it's like too far away like Boston's far enough. She's like a whole nother like coast is like too much. And I feel like the more I've joked about it, the more she's been like, oh, she's okay with it now. So I feel like now, like I've been talking about it for 3 years, like I need to at some point. But yeah, so some of the work I'm working with ASICs right now, and some of the work I'm doing that's what's taking me out to LA once a month. And so I'm spending some time out there, and I really like it. It's just such a nice it's such a nice beach vibe. The people are generally really awesome and open, and the fitness scene's incredible, and the food scene's awesome. So I'm teetering with the idea. We'll see.
And which part of LA? Because I mean, LA is just like ginormous, you know, and you can easily get lost there.
100%. I've been staying in Venice most of the time in Venice Beach, which I love because it's like, it's nice because it has like the grimy, earthy, like hyper liberal homeless-ishness, which is like Asheville, where I'm from.
Okay.
But then it's like it can get swanky and bougie with like the Abbot Kinney's, like the main road there. So there's like awesome restaurants there. So it's nice that there's just like a whole hodgepodge of people in this one tiny area, and it's right on the beach. So far, that's what I like.
No, that's
totally got like a lot. Yeah, I mean, like up your alley, you know, that mix of people. There's fitness scene. You got the beach, so you're pretty sorted over there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really crowded.
Yeah.
There's the boardwalk makes it a little tourist trap, so that's the downfall. But
sure,
we'll see.
Yeah, but when you like go like running a bit further on or down, like it's just so cool. Like they have that path on the beach, and it's just like, oh man, and all the like sort of bars and ropes and things for equipment for the gym. I just when I went there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is.
I was like, sounds like you know it pretty well.
Yeah. It's a good place. I definitely can imagine why you'd want to sort of spend some more time out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Wilmington, I'm trying to think, like Wilmington is known well for something. Is there not like a big sports event, or am I just getting completely confused? Like,
So One Tree Hill, if you've ever seen One Tree Hill, the TV show.
Okay, not.
Maybe not. One Tree Hill was like super popular here. It was filmed there, and some other stuff was filmed there, but I think that's probably it.
Okay.
It's like a small beach town.
Oh, okay.
So probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm probably getting.
You need to brush up on your pop culture there.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Classic stuff.
We'll get you there.
Yeah, cool. So, go Craig.
Go ahead, Gabe.
No, I was just going to say, just kind of give this chat a little bit of context. So one of our previous guests, Umbe, was, I was chatting to him the other day, and he's like, you've got to chat to this girl, Erin. Like, I met her when she came out to South Africa to come to university here. And, she's got a great story, and, like he had a lot of great things to hear about you, to talk about you. And, that's why we got in touch. And it was probably about maybe a couple months ago even, or something like that. And we've been able to now hook it up. So that's really, really cool.
I know. Thanks, Umbi.
Yeah, exactly. It's always cool for us to have like a referral, especially from like previous guests. It sort of means a lot to us.
Especially from one that we really trust and really enjoyed so much, and everyone enjoyed it so much. So it's like, it's a little bit extra, like, we definitely want to chat to Erin,
I know. I was going to say, like, strong recommendation coming from Umbi. Totally humbled by that. So, and you've had such rock stars on this podcast, so I'm super thrilled to be here.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, well, we're so glad to add you to the list. That's for sure. It's really great of you to join us. So yeah, I know we've already spoken a little bit kind of about, where you grew up and stuff, but as part of the podcast, we like to get to know a little bit more about sort of what makes you, and things that have happened to you in your life that make you the lady you are today. So if we can maybe just take it back a little bit to when you were growing up in Asheville, North Carolina, just tell us a little bit about your childhood, your parents, your siblings, and
Yeah, my so tight family. There's 4 of us, so we've always been very we're super tight knit family. We're really close. Both my parents are they were trained social workers. So they met at a group home for children. They were both counselors for this group home. And so they have this incredible story. They've stayed in nonprofit their entire lives. So growing up, we've always been very aware of community service being important, and how you serve your community, and what you do to help others. And that's been a thread through our lives. My dad works for United Way, but Big Brothers Big Sisters is a big part of, it's one of their big partnerships. So he's always had a little brother that was, someone low income, didn't have the same, family situation we did. So it was fun. We always had a different brother, whether they were older or younger than us. There was just always kind of people that would come back into our lives, which was really wonderful. And our parents just kind of just instilled that idea of generosity and giving back, and kind of having us be this one connected world, and how we have to love and treat each other with respect, and generosity being a big part of that. So 100% the thread of our entire family. So my parents are wonderful, very close with them. My mom actually just texted me. We talk a lot. And then I have a sister. She's 2 years older. She's still in North Carolina, over in Charlotte. And she's a rock star. She works as a creative director, but like has her own side business that she's had for a few years. She was a huge part of the reason I went out and did my own side business. She was kind of a huge advocate for me in everything I've done, which is funny because growing up, we've always been, we're very similar. So we've always been a little bit competitive. That's always a little bit tough because she was 2 years older. I took all the same classes, all the same teachers, and she's like valedictorian. She's brilliant. So I took this like sportier. Yeah, right. I was like, I'm the sporty social one, and she's like straight A's, Miss like Queen Bee over there. So we had a little competitiveness growing up, but it was nice as like adults. Once we stopped competing with each other, we found like a real bond, and realized that our skill sets were different enough that we actually like help each other a lot, which has been really great. So, yeah. So childhood was, we were a super tight family. We had Sunday night dinners every Sunday night. My dad does all the cooking in our family. My mom cooks not a bit. Poor mom. And Thursday night was her night to cook, and she would be calling us on the drive home, being like, what should I pick up on the way home for dinner today? And that's just the way mom's always been. So
that was like takeaway nights on Thursdays.
Takeaway night.
It was. She's like, all right, I'm going to pass whatever you want, pizza, you want tacos? And we're like, hey, we love mom's night to cook.
That's so cool.
And Erin, I was just wondering, you said your dad was working, obviously they were both social workers and what have you, but he worked at a specific place where you ended up having people in and out the house. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what that setup was and how that worked? And
yeah, so he's so he works for United Way, which they have like, I guess community branches, and so they basically will raise money to give back to the community and to give back to other organizations. And one of the organizations they support is called Big Brothers Big Sisters. It's a national organization here, and basically partners, I think you have to be 18, if not a little bit older, to be a big brother or a big sister, and you get partnered with your little, and it's just someone that they have their own family, but maybe they just need, a little extra help. Maybe they're missing a mother or a father figure, or they have both those parents, but they just need someone else from an outside perspective to kind of give them some mentorship and some guidance, typically in low income situations, typically somewhat, not necessarily troubled, but in just some way needs like another kind of support system. So this organization, you get partnered up, and then you basically can, work together, have this relationship for as long as possible. Like my dad still communicates with some of the little brothers we had when I was 2 and 3 years old. So
wow.
I think you have to spend it's typically at least like one day a month. Usually it's more than that, and it's just kind of whether you're doing homework or you're playing games, or it's really just kind of that like mentorship and to create that bond, so the young people can have kind of someone to look up to and talk to. So, yeah.
That's such a cool initiative. So they would kind of bring them over to your house, and you'd be like, hey, this is so-and-so, and you guys would just hang out a bit? Or would there be a specific stuff you'd have to do? Or
Well, every relationship is just kind of different. And I remember the first one. So I was born in Greenville, North Carolina, which is back kind of on the eastern side. And the first little brother my dad had that I remember, his name was Fiokwa. We called him Fio. And he was very much a part of our family. Like he was around, at least I was so young. I remember him being around so much. And like Friday nights he'd come over and we'd all have pizza, and we had remote control cars. We'd play remote control cars together. They would just, just my dad and him play basketball on the weekends. There was another, and then we ended up moving. They stayed in touch. There was another one, oh my gosh, his name is escaping me and this is going to kill me. He was my age when we moved here, and I was in middle school. So it was fun. It's going to hit me at the tip of my tongue. And he would we go to games all the time. So we go to basketball games, we go to hockey games, and he'd come over and have like family dinners at our house. And there's just kind of each relationship's a little bit different, but it was always nice to have someone else be able to enjoy our family as well.
Yeah,
100%.
That's such a nice initiative, I must say. Is it is brothers and sisters like an international thing? Do you know, or is it like?
I know it's nationwide, so it's very popular here in the U.S. I don't know if it's probably just called something different. I'm sure there's something somewhat similar.
Yeah, that's really cool. And are you sort of like, to this day, are you in touch with any of those people still, like, or?
No, not regularly. No. A lot of times they end up moving away, or we end up moving away, and things kind of shift. Theo actually he'll still email my dad every once in a while, and my dad will send pictures of us or things like that, which is nice, but not as much. But yeah, it's cool. It's very cool.
But you have that time in your life where, like you say, it's almost like that creating a bit of community environment where you're just sharing. You're sharing what you've learned. You're sharing your actual physical stuff. So even if it's just temporary, it's just good to get people out of that scenario that they're in, and just share it around a little bit. I mean, I think it just sounds like such a good idea to be able to do actually. So you guys totally grew up in an environment where, wow, you're just giving and caring, and connection is just sort of part of your life, really, which is actually really, really awesome to have that as kids. It's not something you have to learn later on. It's just like, wow, this is how it works.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, my parents they're very liberal in that regards. Like, we grew up, like, we've never had keys to our house. Like, we don't lock our house. And that's like, obviously, like a little bit of a privilege being, like, in the US where we live. And like, that doesn't make sense in a lot of places, but it just was that idea of like, I feel like my dad literally was like, if they want something, they can come take it. Like, and not that he's like literally being like, someone should come into our home and break into it. Yeah. But that idea of like, we were never like a closed off family, right? Like, we were always like giving or helping or doing, or it was just kind of, we were taught that we were all just this like one world, and it was all connected. And, if we succeed, other people succeed. And if they succeed, that we succeed. And it all just kind of, it was just one, which was just nice. And I also didn't realize how different it was, I guess, until I went to school, until I went to college, until I studied abroad. And there were so many other people that didn't have anything near that perspective, which is totally normal. It's not it's no one's fault, and it's not good or bad. It just was like a really wonderful way that I got to grow up.
Yeah, it's very, very nice way. Like, it's so cool. Like, it's almost like he knows that he's doing a good thing, and that nothing will really happen to him, which is why he doesn't feel he needs to kind of lock his door and stuff, because he just gives out a lot of good energy and good karma, and something will protect him, I guess.
Yeah. And my mom's actually, she's a teacher. She's an elementary school teacher. So she now teaches second grade, and she's at a low income school. And so it's a school where the majority of the kids are ESL, which is English as a second language. So most of their families are immigrants over here. Some of them they're usually grades and grades lower below their reading level than they should be. So it's this kind of, ultra help need situation. And these kids are usually, the only meals they're eating are the meals they get at school, and they're free and reduced lunches. And so my mom also comes home with these like ridiculous, like kind of insane stories of what these kids have to go through. But then they're just these like angel children. And my mom she always has like a couple she wants to like adopt every year. And she's like, I just want these kids to be like my little kids. I know. And it's so great. My dad and I, over Thanksgiving, I was home for a few days, and we went to my mom's school and went for their recess. And so we could play with the kids at recess, and we were playing soccer with them or whatever. And just like seeing my mom with these like angel humans that have just like such hard lives that they were just born into. And she's just like so patient and caring and wonderful with them that I know my parents they're just angel humans. They're just saints.
Isn't that nice to see your parents because you don't often necessarily get to see them in their environment thriving like that, and that's such a cool thing to actually be able to see. And then you see, well, that's where that comes from, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, it's true. They're so supportive of my sister and I that, it's nice to pause and kind of, appreciate them in their element too.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine, like, you don't really maybe realize it when you're growing up that you growing up with so much love, you know, that it just makes your childhood so much better, and it prepares you, I guess, so well for your future too, you know, especially with the way you deal with people.
Yeah.
And you know, another thing is it seems to me, hey Gareth, like what you're saying there is, it seems whenever we hear this kind of story from people, it's like almost, it seems so simple. Like why don't more people do it in a way? Like let's just all teach our kids stuff like that. And our default mode is often a negative thing, but it's just as easy to be a default mode the other way. And so that's just a really cool message in and of itself.
Yeah. So it's interesting too, because I feel like I've started to have a lot now that I'm like becoming older and just a real adult. And so like things like dating and all of those things are just, they're like a higher, like you're just at a higher level, right? Like you're choosing someone that you're going to build this foundation of a life with to be able to raise these wonderful children and give that same love and generosity. And I feel like that's something that's so important. Of like my parents have such a rock solid relationship, and they're so compatible, and they're so respectful and loving and trusting to each other. And that's why it seems so easy for our family and all of our relationships to be that way. And I feel like that's what, you know, so many of my friends that don't have that same rock solid relationship in their parents, like those issues get kind of trickled down. And so, you know, it's just funny now that I'm like, you know, having to make these bigger decisions, you think about things like that and of like what relationship and what love is. That's the example you're deciding to show for everybody else in your world. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And it's so, I don't know, I love hearing that sort of story, you know, like of just warmness and like fondness and love. And it's like Craig said, it just makes it seem like so much easier if the world was that way. You know what I mean? If everyone was like that with each other, how cool would it be? You know, we wouldn't have to worry about, I don't know, just like people being evil or arrogant or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or I don't know, all those type of, you know, horrible things. But and like I often think about it, like how crazy is it, okay, that we have to lock our front doors? Like it almost doesn't make any sense. Or when we go to the gym, we have to lock our stuff up in a locker because the people that we go to gym with, we can't trust because they might steal our stuff. It's just like, what? It doesn't, you know what I mean? It's like, how did we get to this point?
I feel like I should not say this in public, but I was like, I never lock my gym stuff, ever. I never lock my gym stuff. I always leave it open. And I feel like it's that same idea. Like when I moved to Boston, I would often not lock my door. And my roommate was like, you can't do this. Like, this is not okay. Like, we're in a big city. It's different. And I was like, whatever, it's fine. And, you know, you had to adapt also to your environment a little bit. But yeah, even in South Africa, I was living there. It was just so weird to me to walk down the streets and it's just like big fences, like huge fences with their guard dogs. It wasn't even a locked door. It was like, we are shutting off from anything outside of it in that regards, which is obviously a safety feature, but it was like alarming to me.
Yeah.
But you know, like with the gym bag locking and, you know, that's a smaller scale than obviously the houses and the big fences. But I think it becomes like you don't want to be the one that doesn't lock your bag because then you're an easy picking or whatever, you know, like, and so I guess people just become super defensive about all of that. And it almost just becomes a vicious cycle and you just go, and that's definitely, I think, like that in South Africa, because then people feel like, oh, well, I don't want to be the only guy without the massive fence. And because everyone will look at my house then. And it's actually so horrible because most of the time it's just useless and what's the point? But you you sort of fall into that trap of feeling like you have to do that as well. And then, and then you become like more suspicious of everyone else because now you've locked your stuff and have they locked theirs? And, you know, it's just ridiculous.
It's like this vicious circle.
It is. Yeah. I was having lunch with a friend in LA and she was telling me about how she had just listened to a different podcast and this man was explaining how the world we live in is like we live in a world of like scarcity. Like we feel like there's like some type of scarcity. Like we need to hold on to our belongings, hold on to our possessions, hold on to all these things in our world. Like instead of living in this more open way and open process and living out of generosity, we live in this like hoarding mentality. And you see it and you pause and you're like, oh my God, that's so true. Like It's so true. And it just feeds off of each other and becomes this cycle, as you said. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I wonder if there's ever going to be like this pivot where something's going to make us change in the way we act as humans, and it probably has happened in the past, and might happen again. We never know. But yeah, it's interesting about the house thing, because in South Africa, like, I mean, I can still remember the alarm code on my mom's house and like how to lock the 6 doors and like everything. There was just so many things. But when I came to London, like my house I live in now, I didn't lock my door for the first 10 years. Like I did never lock my front door. No, because it felt so safe. And only like a year after my girlfriend moved in, like, did we decide, okay, maybe we should just start locking the front door. Just because I just felt okay, well, now I have someone else to kind of look after and be responsible for. So I can just lock the front door. It's not a big deal. But I feel like it's a big deal mentally. You know what I mean? Like, it makes me angry that now I have to do this in a way, because I shouldn't have to. It's so crazy.
It's so true. I know.
Yeah.
But talking about South Africa, while we're there, so obviously at school, you whatever, you did your schooling and what have you, and then what was the journey sort of getting to South Africa, and actually NMMU, as you would know, that's my neck of the wood. That's where I grew up. Nice. How did you end up there? What is the process to get you there?
Yeah. So I hadn't traveled outside of the country. Actually, I'd been to Canada, didn't count that. But when I went to school, I knew I wanted to study abroad. And the program I was in, I was able to study abroad for a whole year and still be able to graduate on time. So I ended up deciding to do my junior year abroad. I did my first semester in London, and then second semester. So I wanted to do somewhere in Europe that I could travel around Europe. And then I wanted to do somewhere that would be hard for me to visit and like immerse myself in the culture. So somewhere that was like very different. And I was in between India and South Africa. And I was basically just looking at like kind of sister schools that we had connections to. So there's like a student exchange program. So instead of me having to pay directly NNMU, I could just pay my own fees. And it was like one of their students came here. So it was like an easy switch. So it kind of just worked out that I was leaning towards South Africa. The program in India was not totally what I was looking for. So it just kind of fell together. And I found out when I was in London that I got into the program, which was really exciting. Didn't know anyone else going. So it was kind of this huge adventure. So yeah, it was kind of a random decision, to be honest. And then got there and it was awesome. We lived in this these like compoundish thing. There were these like there was like 45 of these like small brick homes, and there was like 4 rooms in each of the corners, and then there was like a shared like kitchen. It was like a
commune or what?
Yeah. And there was like one bathroom, and there's like a little toaster oven with like a hot plate on top. So there was like a bunch of us. It was like a rolling hill. So it was cool because there was like it was an international student housing. So there was like people from other African countries. There were tons of people from like Germany and Europe and Minnesota and all over the US. So it was nice that we also could just, get to know each other. And then I got to know a lot of locals because I took a lot of classes. I was studying, PR and media in Africa. And so I was in tons of group projects. And so that was the nice part, is I really felt like I could like immerse myself with like the locals, and I wasn't just hanging out with international students. Not that they weren't wonderful, and I totally hung out with them, but that wasn't why I was there. So it was just kind of nice that I could do both. And that was a longer program too. We ended up being there for like 6 months. So we could, travel around a little bit, which was much harder to do than I expected. And yeah, really feel like we like lived there and lived as locally, I guess, as possible. So.
Were you living in is that Summer Strand? Were you like up at the top there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, now you say that.
And so, did you hit the beach a few times and that kind of thing?
Yes, definitely did the beach. Nice. I actually turned 21 while I was in South Africa towards the end. And I was, my family was great. They like flooded me with letters, which was so nice because it was like, really far away to be from home. But I was like 21 in South Africa, and one of my best friends there that I became best friends with was also an American. And I was like, I want to have the most American birthday in South Africa. And so we like went to McDonald's, we ate McDonald's, we went to the casino and played blackjack, and we went out somewhere that night or whatever. I was like, I want to do as many American things as possible on my 21st birthday.
What's a 21st birthday like in America? Is it a biggie or is it not that big?
Yeah, so when you turn 21 is when you can drink legally. So it's like,
of course,
it's a big birthday in the US. Yeah. So obviously we could like already drink in South Africa and it wasn't a big deal. We could already gamble. Like it was not a big deal at all in South Africa, but I was like, let's pretend. Usually like your friends will make like a list, and like sometimes they make you wear it as a sign, and you have to like do 21 things on the day of your birthday. So they're just like really silly or random or whatever thing. So it could be like a specific shot you have to take, or like whatever, introduce yourself to somebody at the bar, or whatever, just random things. And so there's these like American traditions that we still got to do because I had another American there with me, so it was nice.
That's cool.
And Erin, what were some of the confronting things that you noticed being in an African country, studying there, living there? Give us a little bit of an insight to, as an outsider coming in, what sort of shocked you, and then also some of the like positive stuff. What were the nice things that you saw as well?
Yeah. There was a lot that shocked me. This was also like 6 or 7 years ago. So I was like, now I got to like tap back into it. So the amount of languages that were spoken everywhere was like very hard to get used to. I was like in constant, had no idea what was going on. But I felt like, so a few of the people that I got to be good friends with were really interested about learning more about the townships, which was something I felt so ignorant going into South Africa and had no idea what was really going on. So we would like spend some time in the townships and like literally just like kind of walking around and trying to talk to people, which seems like such a weird thing to do now. But one of my friends, honestly, he had dreadlocks. And so his name was Dane, and he was wonderful. And he was just this like love life kind of guy. And because he had dreadlocks, people really respected him. So they actually like really like welcomed us in their their quote unquote homes and communities, which was really nice. And so, but it was just like so raw, being like, this is literally where you're sleeping and eating. And I had one girl come up to me, and she like it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. We had been there for like an hour or two, just talking to different people, and people were very open, which I thought was also very interesting. People were just coming up and I kind of expected them to be like asking things from us or like harassing us. And people were just like, oh, what are you doing? Whatever. Like, let's chat, let's talk, whatever. And I had this one girl at 3:00 in the afternoon be like, what are you doing here? Like, you need to leave. And she was like a high school, probably like 18, 19 years old. And I was like, what are you talking about? We're here, whatever. And she was like, this is too dangerous for you. Like, you have to go. Like, they're talking about wanting to like kill you. And I was like,
what?
Exactly. I was like, this was insane. And I just was like, it just like freaked me out. And I was like, we have to leave. And she was just, sorry, I'm trying to protect you. Like, people are just like, you guys have been here too long, basically. Like, you need to leave. And I was like, shocked. Yeah. And so I was like, her and I got to talking for like a while. And then as throughout this, whatever, she had a really incredible story. So that was 100% shocking. That was obviously more drastic part of it. But I felt like it was important to at least kind of see some of the rawness of Africa, and at least try to. I think it's, and so many of our programs, they wanted to shelter us from it, which is fair to keep us safe, but that's not, and I still don't even feel like I got a lot of the realness, but you have to try for that.
Well, I'll tell you what, like you've probably done a lot more than maybe many South Africans have even done by going into townships.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, not many people would go in because of the safety reason.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
You've definitely you've immersed yourself quite well into it.
Yeah. It just felt like you had to, right? Where I was here to learn about their culture and learn about how they live and what they go through. And I had to. It was interesting. Because I was studying media, one of our assignments was to read the newspaper every day, which I thought was like really interesting. And I was like, I should be doing more of this anyways. But I was like, the newspaper was depressing. It was like the stories in the newspaper. I mean, like, had a hard time reading the newspaper every day because it was horrendous. It was so, I mean, I remember this like specific story about, they were talking about the AIDS epidemic and talking about these people they couldn't take their medicine because they didn't have anything to eat, and you have to take it. You can't take it on an empty stomach, and so they were eating cow dung to take these AIDS pills. And I was like, I mean, it was just
like the kind of stories.
A day after, and that was like a normal story. That wasn't a headliner. It was like, I just was, it was hard to live in it. And then, because you wanted to kind of like stop seeing it, you know what I mean? But then it was really hard to like experience it and try and see as much of it, and then go back home to my comfort in the US and be totally removed from it and have that be somehow okay. It was really, really difficult. Yeah, it was incredible.
What did you tell your family and stuff when you went back to the US? And what did they think?
Yeah, I talked to them a lot when I was there. We Skyped a lot when I was on campus because I didn't have Wi-Fi at our little apartment, which was also before I didn't have a smartphone at home or anything there. So like Instagram wasn't a thing yet. So it's funny how like it was annoying then, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And I was like, now I feel like my world would have been blown to not have internet where I lived. But I told them everything. And I think my mom was scared often. She was in fact, when I first got to Africa, I couldn't contact her for a couple of days because there just wasn't internet anywhere. Wow. And she was I mean, she had contacted the school. She had contacted, like, she had somehow through social media figured out other kids that were on my program, contacted them on social media, been like, anyone heard from you? And I was like, I mean, just things you don't think about that are so normal to us was not normal there, which was really surprising. But there's there was so much wonderful too. Like I got to know this guy, Lindsay Simons, and he was so wonderful. And he was local, and he told me a lot about the different, I guess, how people, I was like, I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way. Like how it's black, it's white, it's mixed, it's colored, like all these different classifications that we just don't have to that degree. And he had lots of different friends, and all their friends' parents were really good friends. So they'd host these like braais all the time. And so they'd invite me to their like braais with their families. And so it was so wonderful to get that side of it too. And, I have such fond memories from there. So
there's some good hospitality. Like that's one thing that places like that often have really good hospitality. Just like welcome, come in, just become, hang out, which is cool.
It was great.
Yeah,
we did this one, our like big trip. We did a trip there's like 2 cars of us full to Lesotho, and we spent like a week in Lesotho, and we stayed there's like one hostel where we stayed at, and it was like not in I can't think of the main town. It was like farther in. And I was like, speaking of hospitality, the kids would come, because we were the only people staying at this hostel. The kids would come over and they'd make money by like taking us on hikes and taking the people that came visit on hikes. So they'd like come over and they have their like blankets. They would just like wrap their blankets around, and they'd have their like rain boots, and they would take us on these big hikes, and they had like never seen cell phones and never listened to like our music. So we were like giving them all our like iPods so they could listen to music, and they were like taking selfies. And so they'd take us like through their village and all these hikes. And so we'd see them like whatever, chopping wood. And they'd take us to their little hut where they brew their own beer and wine, which is like not real beer and wine. But they were so proud that they could like make this, that they would be like, please come share. And we're like, oh my gosh, it's okay, thank you. Like,
but it's so strong.
Exactly. We're like, oh my gosh. But yeah, they would just like immerse us, take us in. They were just so proud of whatever they had, and they wanted to share anything, and it just was it was wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. I think I still find to this day that South Africans are massively hospitable, and they just love having people over to their house. And especially if you are from another country, they'll just want to sort of, speak to you and ask you questions, but also try and impress you, like not impress you, but just like, really make you feel at home. Yeah,
for sure. Oh, I totally felt that.
Yeah,
I totally felt that.
Yeah, that's so cool. And, so how did you meet Umbe? Like, where did that all sort of happen?
He was my neighbor. So he lived in our little like compound, and literally it was like our room. Everyone had their own sliding glass doors to their room, and it was like my room, and his little corner was like right next to mine. So he always had his like sliding glass door open, and I mean, everyone knew Umbe around. But yeah, we would chat. He was super sarcastic. he always made homemade popcorn. That was like his thing. I didn't know what like non-bagged popcorn was until I met Umbi. And he would like stove popcorn, and he'd be like, you can pick your own like flavor. Like I have all these flavors you put on top. And I was like, oh, Umbi. So yeah, that's how we met. And we just like, it was funny. We were good friends then. And I feel like we became much better friends afterwards. Like in the past few years, he was one of the few, there's a handful of people I've kept up with. And he was one of the few that, we just happened to, power of social media, happened to stay in touch. And then, as his world really changed, he just like was really like active in keeping up with me. And he's been so supportive in everything I've done. And he's like one of the first ones to like ask me the hard questions, which I think is also really cool and like kind of a testament to who he is and kind of our friendship. So, he's really good for that.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity where we get to speak about him without him being here, so this is really good.
So you can let us know, any stories. But yeah, I know what you mean. Because I had a good chat with him the other day actually, and like he was pressing me for like some questions, but like in just an intriguing, curious way, And I was like, wow, okay, I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it is good though. It's good to kind of like challenge your thinking, and
it is.
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny. He when I first, this must have been like a year and a half ago or whatever. We had a FaceTime, and FaceTimes also with Umbi are not short FaceTimes. And we were like getting into it, and he's like asking me some questions about just like my fitness routine and whatever, and I'm giving him kind of these just like kind of some basic answers, and he's like, he's like, you're more than that, you're better than that, like you're oversimplifying it, like you're selling yourself short. And I'm like, what? And he's like digging into this, and then I'm like, oh, you're right. And I was like, so I feel like he can like see beyond what the surface crap you're kind of giving him. He's like, like you're more of a human than that. And so I was like, I feel like he sees you for your potential, not than necessarily what you are right here, which is not even in such a positive way. That sounds like a bad thing. So I think that's one of his gifts.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. 100%. And so before you went to SA, you went to Roehampton University. Was that right, in London?
Yeah.
And how long was it? A month, did you say, or a bit longer?
I was there for 4 months.
Oh, cool. And how did you feel? Like it was your first trip? That was your first trip out of America besides Canada?
Yeah.
And how was that?
Oh, I loved London. I still love London. I have such a soft spot in my heart from London. I was very upset when I left. I fully thought I was going to move back and live in London. And I mean, maybe I will at some point in my life. But I loved it. I had great flatmates. One girl from LA, one guy from Greece, one guy from another part of the UK, and two of them, Kate from LA and Bradley from the UK, we still keep up. In fact, I saw Bradley last summer. I went to London to visit him. So I just felt like I had, I made like the best of friends there. And I feel like that was the first time like I was like, I'm a very like community person. Like my friends are important to me. My family is important to me. And my dad was like, my mom had never been out of the country before. And my dad dropped out of school to travel around Europe with one of his best friends. So on both ends, for different reasons, my parents were like pushing me out the door, like, go, you have to go. So it was like the first time I was like, kind of standing on my own 2 feet, which was wonderful. And London was just, I was obsessed. It was like right by Wimbledon. I'm a big tennis fan. So I'd do my like runs right by the Wimbledon stadiums, which was just like insane to me. Yeah. It was awesome.
Oh, that's cool. Were you there around about the time Wimbledon was on as well?
No, just after. Yeah, that's on my bucket list. I have to go to all 4 Grand Slams. I did the U.S. Open last year.
Cool.
So the closest one I've checked off, but I got some traveling to do for the other 3.
What's it like? What's it like at the U.S. Open? It always looks like a good vibe. Like Americans really rooting for the underdog in their guys. Like it seems like a good atmosphere.
It was a great time. I went to the women's finals match. I think it was the finals. Yeah. Semifinals. It was one of the last 2, and actually with my my best girlfriend from South Africa. She actually lives in New York, Carson. So her and I got to meet up and go together, which was so fun. So it was a great vibe. They have like specific they have like specialty cocktails made just for like the US Open, and they're called like the honeydew. There's a play on words in the title somewhere, but they cut out these like cantaloupe shapes in the shape of tennis balls. So they're like pristine. They go like all out for this US Open. but yeah, we had terrible seats. We could like hardly see what was going on down there, but we just had a good time with it.
It's really cool.
So your sports always been in your background. It's you obviously you love your tennis and that kind of thing, and now it's part of who you are, literally like day to day, and your persona and your public face of everything is also very sporty. But you obviously grew up quite sporty as well. What was the transition and the evolution of your sporting sort of journey?
Yeah. I feel like I always played sports just in like a social way. Like my friends did it, my sister did it, my dad was our coach. And so it was just like a social thing. And I was like generally pretty athletic, but no one was like, oh, she's going to go pro, or, oh, she's going to go to college on a scholarship. Like it wasn't ever to that level. So I played soccer growing up, and then, tennis became my main thing going into high school, and always did track because my best friend did track, and it kind of kept me in shape. So I was never I never saw myself as an athlete. And I think, honestly, a lot of people I probably went to high school with are like really shocked that I'm like a fitness professional now, because it just wasn't like an obvious choice. Like I didn't want to study science or the body or anything in college. So that was like fitness has never been about kind of like the science behind it for me. It's always been about like community and how we can connect with people. And so I feel like I've always, movement's always been important. I always like to run, especially when I moved to a new city or to go visit a new city, because it was an easy way to kind of get your lay of the land. You could just go for a few miles around, and it was like a way that Boston could kind of feel like home for me. I could kind of discover it on my own 2 feet was way easier than, taking a day to walk around or whatever. So, so I was always into movement. But I was working in PR to start. I did a weird year in finance. And kind of during that year in finance is when I realized like my favorite 2 hours of the day are like planning my workout and going to the gym and being in there and talking about it. And, which is, I think, normal. I think a lot of people enjoy that. But I realized like I wasn't happy with what I was doing. Like maybe I should, just pursue that a little bit further, and decided to get my personal training certification just to learn about how to train myself. Like, again, never wanted to train anybody else. Like this was never about anybody else for me. But I was like, oh, I should be a little more educated. So I went through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. It's like an online program. And while I'm learning it, like in a book, I'm like, I don't know how to lift heavy weights. Like I couldn't get on a squat rack right now and feel comfortable. And I would go to the gym in college with some of my friends, and there's like the girls section of the gym, which is like the cardio machines and the little light weights. And there's like the boys section of the gym, and that's where all like the big heavy everything else is. And I always thought it was like so cool when like girls were on the heavy side. Like I was like, oh, they're so badass. Like they know like weights. But never, it just like wasn't how I like saw myself. So I'm like going through this process, and I decided to hire a trainer. Basically just to be my mentor and to like teach me how to do it and then how to teach it. And his name's Johnny Loretti, and I found him kind of randomly. And so we worked together once a week. Like he would train me, but when we were training, he would be like, all right, what's your primary muscles activating? What are the secondary muscles activating? Like what, oh, check your posture here. Like it was very like collaborative the whole time, which was awesome. Best way to learn. And then, him and I just formed a great relationship. And so, so whatever, fast forward a little bit, I tried personal training. I don't like it. Wasn't into the one-on-one, had some odd clients, and then was working in this job, and we got gym membership paid for. So a bunch of us would go together at lunch. And so, we're going at lunch, and some of the guys are like, oh, I want to get in on your leg day, which is like classic men, like not training their legs and only training upper body. And I was like, cool. Yeah. Like we can, you can work in on my leg day. And the girls were then like kind of feeling left out. So then I was like, all right, let's do like a group, quote unquote, leg day. So we'd come in and we'd take over one of the group fitness classrooms, and I would lead this like boot camp style class. And it like turned into a group fitness class, which was like never the intention. I'd never taught one. And it was just for my coworkers. And then this guy, Tim, ran this company that basically brought trainers into residential buildings to train them personal training or group fitness. And he saw me teaching that, and he was like, oh, like, are you a group fitness instructor? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, do you want to be? And I was like, maybe. And then he kind of took me under his wing and, got me a few classes and kind of taught me how to teach a class. And then things kind of snowballed from there. And then the whole kind of process of it was I realized I loved number one, being with people again. It's always kind of brought back to that community aspect. I loved the idea of like strangers coming into a classroom together, like the majority of them not knowing each other, and like going through this like 45 minutes or an hour long together, and they're like high-fiving each other, they're like chatting each other up. Like it just is like this weirdest thing of like strangers coming together and then being able to like walk out of there, maybe friends, maybe not, but like you just went through this cool 45 minutes, you grew together, you're all stronger together, and you just feel great about it. And I just loved kind of that vibe became like addicting for me. And so that's why I like loved teaching and loved figuring out how I can kind of bring that energy and bring that community spirit, you know, through fitness, which has been cool. So that's my long-winded story.
And what's your sort of favorite thing at the moment? Is it running? Is it hitting weights? You know, what do you sort of get the most out of?
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always liked lifting. I've always liked lifting heavy. Heavy obviously being like relative to who you are. But I always just, well, number one, feel very confident in the boys section of the gym now, which I think is awesome. And it still is like, like every time I walk in there, I'm still just like, okay, go me. Like it still feels cool for me. And it's been whatever, 5 years now. So I love that. I also love, like I took a Barry's boot camp class today. Do you guys have, I don't think you have Barry's in Australia.
We have it in
London. Yeah, my friend actually just moved to London and she teaches there. So you should go find Nicole if you go to Barry's. But I love Barry's too, because it still is that strength side, but then you're running. And I was like, it's like the one time I feel like I'm like really crushing my run is like in a Barry's boot camp class. So I kind of like the high intensity, the switch of having that cardio and that strength in there. So that's probably my jam right now.
Your jam. I like that word.
My jam.
Because when we were filling in, you're filling in the like the storyboard, and I wrote, "Oh, yoga. You know, is that what you used to do?" You're like, "Nah, yoga is not really my jam."
Oh, I did. I said it there too.
Yeah, I was like, okay, got that. And
yeah, yoga's not my thing.
so just one sort of interesting thing, which is like moving to the side a little bit, but you had a very notable mentor in your life, and it's for us it's quite an interesting one too, and we'd love for you to tell the story about it, like how, why, and you know, how do you know this person?
Yeah, so this is going to touch on, so it really came from the blog post, which I know we'll talk about at some point.
Cool.
So I wrote this blog post that went viral, and it totally opened up doors for me, and random people were reaching out to me. Like I was on, did a lot of interviews from it. Just my face was a little bit everywhere and in everyone's inbox for a while. And I got this random email. And I've just started to talk about him publicly, but I usually don't name drop him. But so he just sent me an email, and at the time he was the CEO of Digitas for North America, and Digitas is like one of the top ad agencies. I'm pretty sure worldwide, but has a huge population here in Boston. He was based in Chicago at the time. And he basically just wrote me this email out of the blue and was like, hey, someone passed along your blog article. I was super impressed. Like, I just think we should meet. Like, I'd love to meet you. Like, I'm going to be in Boston next week. Like, do you have time for breakfast? And I was like, of course I have time for breakfast. And so I go and meet him for breakfast, and, you know, we're talking about the article. And it was funny because he, at the time, like, so the article was like a little background. The article was about like street harassment against women, specifically in the fitness world. And I'm talking about why this is an issue, and, you know, what do we do to change it, and how society's part of the problem. And he's thinking, or he came into it kind of thinking like, I gave talks on this. Like, this was my platform. This was what I did, who I was. And really, I was just like pissed off one afternoon, wrote this blog article, it took off. And so he's like, you know, how can we work together? How can we bring you into Digitas? And you can, like, you know, maybe lead a seminar or whatever. And I was like, sure, like never done that. I'm like 25 years old. I was like, no idea how to like talk about this like in that scalable way. And so he's like through this breakfast, very much realizing that was like not who I was or what I did or any of that. And at the end of it, he's like, I just think we should stay in touch. And in fact, like, I'd actually really like you to come work for us. And I was like, whoa, like I loved my job. I'm really not looking for another job, but, you know, this is interesting. You know, you can't close any doors there. So, you know, wrote him a nice email afterwards, and he, you know, actually put me in touch with a couple of his coworkers, and got to meet them, who are also huge, just people in the advertising world and social media world. So it was really interesting. And then he sends me this other email like a week later. He's like, hey, I'm coming back to Boston. Like, do you have time to like grab a drink or grab dinner or whatever? And my schedule's all over the place because I teach at nights and in the mornings. And so it's like, yeah, like I can meet you after one of my classes. So I meet him for a drink, and we literally are sitting down, and he's like, from the beginning is like pushing me. Like, for example, I'd met the man once, and he was like, what's something you kind of want to do? And it was a few years ago. And at the time I was like, oh, I'd really like to lead like fitness and wellness retreats, which is like really trendy now. It was not a big thing at the time. And I was like, oh, that's like such a far off idea. And I totally just like undermined it. And he was like, no, why would you want to do that? How would you make that happen? Like, he was very much like this world is yours. Like, why are you the one kind of putting yourself back? And this is like, I had just ordered a drink. This was the conversation. And I was like, what's happening? So we end up like having dinner. And this whole time at dinner, he's like pushing me like that, actually very similar to how Umbi does. He's like pushing me, and he's like, getting deep on like on my relationships with people and what I want out of this world and what I'm capable of. And he's at the end of dinner, my mind is like blown by this whole conversation to begin with. Like that, first of all, he's this man in like extreme power, and he's just genuinely like wanting to know my story and like how he can help me and who I am. And I just that alone was insane. And then at the end of this dinner, he stops and he says, like, do you have any mentors in your life? And I was like, like, I've always had like work mentors. That's kind of, you put in that position. And I was like, I've never really had any like, like life mentors or anything. And he was like, well, he's like, I don't think you've ever had anyone like tell you that like you're meant for bigger things in this world. Like, you have an authenticity, like you have a passion, like you have a drive, like you are meant for more than the time I had maybe 3,000 followers on Instagram. Like, more than 3,000 people need to be like hearing your voice and need to have exposure to you. And I don't think anyone like has told you that outside of your family, which is a different kind of bubble of support. And he's like, I want to be your mentor. Like, I can expose you to this world that you're supposed to be a part of and that you're going to change people's lives. And I want to help you get there. I have these like I'm like dying at this point. He's like, I have these like 3 rules. And he literally is like, I have like, if I'm going to be your mentor, like I have these rules. And one of them was like, I had to watch a TED Talk every day. I had to journal. I think it was journal. I'd read TED Talk every day. I had to journal every day. He's going to kill me that I don't remember all these rules now. But the ultimate one was like, no matter what happens, like you have to put like yourself first. And if that means stepping on me, if that means stepping on somebody else in like an appropriate way, he's like, do it. He's like, I'm here to help you. Like, if that means at some point you and I sever ties, like do it. Like, this isn't about me. This is about you. Like, you need to own your power basically. And I was like, I'm in. Like, what do you mean? Of course I'm in. Like, this is insane. And so I walk out of that, and I literally, I'm like going home, and I'm like, he told me to journal. So I'm like, I'm journaling, and I'm like word vomiting our entire night. And I'm like, it just was, I've never had someone of such power just be like, just have that huge amount of confidence in you. It was just a very mind blowing thing. And then since then, he literally was like, what's your business plan? What's your whatever? And I was like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like, I don't know where this is going. And, so anyways, he's always been just the one that like totally pushed me, and we stayed in contact. It's funny. So as a new job, he's the CMO of Dunkin' Donuts, which he got in September. And it was cool because I was a little bit a part of getting to hear the background of how he kind of got that role, and he kind of pulled me into a lot of those negotiations, just in terms of like learnings and how he's handling it. When I was going out on my own to start my own business, he was someone I totally soundboarded ideas off of. And he's someone that pulls me into some big events. Like I went to Women in Billboard's music event, which, he got me invited to. So he's now lives in Boston, which is awesome. He's actually my neighbor, and now we hardly see each other. But he's always just kind of been, the huge voice in my corner. And I mean, anything and everything I need, from like relationship advice to career advice, he's like a text away, quite literally. So yeah, he's a good one to have in my corner.
And he's your neighbor now. That's insane.
My neighbor. Meant to be. Wow. He's the best.
How amazing is that to just get some like, if more people just got some encouraging words at a like critical stage of their life, what a difference it can make to someone's life. It's just incredible.
It's insane. And it's funny. It gives you this like this idea of like, oh, I really can do anything. Like, I've never wanted to start my own business. I've never had that entrepreneurial spirit in me. Like, it just wasn't ever in my realm. And it was just, quite honestly, like between him and my sister, I was like, fuck yeah, I can do it. Like there was just no shadow of a doubt in my mind anymore. And just having someone in your corner to be able to say that is everything. So totally agree.
I think it's very powerful when somebody can give you a sense of possibility, and you're like, wow, okay, maybe I can do that. So it really is a nice thing to sort of be able to give that to people.
It is. Yeah. And I also, so I've, speaking opportunities are like a new thing for me. I've started hosting some events and being a part of some panels. And that's like the one advice I always give is, like, I've never been afraid to reach out to people I wanted to learn something from. And whether that's through social media or anything, is kind of harass people to learn something from them. And so many people are so afraid, and you're almost wondering what they're afraid of. You know what I mean? The worst thing is you're not going to hear from them. But the best thing is maybe something like this happens. And granted, he reached out to me and this was a different situation, but lots of other situations of people that I really admire and got to learn from and become friends with and have opportunities from, because you could just reach out and say, hey, let's connect. Hey, I want to learn from you. Hey, let's grab a beer. Like, that's whatever. And I think people think they have to do so much on their own when you don't. Everyone is successful because someone else helped them get that success. And so I mean, I tell people all the time, like, how can I help you? Like, what can I do to support you? Or, anything. It goes back to that connected world, right? You succeed, I succeed. So so important.
And that, you mentioned it earlier as well, like, there's enough sunshine for everyone. That was part of your, mantra growing up, and
totally.
and you're totally living that way. But how cool is it that we are able to, like, one of his pieces of advice was listen to a TED Talk every day. Like, I think that's we're so lucky that we're able to listen to people like whoever's on stage on a TED Talk, and I can just be sitting at home for free and listen to the best speakers in the world. Like, literally just amazing, eh?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So that night, one of the other things as we're talking about TED Talks, he was like, one of the first questions of the night is, he's like, what's your TED Talk going to be on? And I was like,
wow.
Yeah. And I was like, I have no idea. Like, at that time, I had no idea. And I had no like real structure of voice, I felt like, or structure of like purpose or what I was offering. And I was kind of all over the place. And he was like, that's going to be like your mission. Like, that's going to be your mission in life. That's going to be your business. That's going to be your book. That's going to be your mantra. Like, what's your TED Talk? What's your 15 minutes of value you can bring? And he's like, that's what you need to figure out. And that's what you need to find. And so I was like, questions for the two of you. What's your TED Talk going to be? Definitely something to think about.
Yeah, I like it. So has yours started to take shape yet?
So it started to. And I actually am hosting an event soon that I was kind of hoping was going to be a part of like the long version of my TED Talk, and it's taking a different direction. But I met this guy, Coach. His name's Coach Adam Cobb in New York, and he has a great TED Talk about like the 8th day. It's like no days off. And anyway, it's a great TED Talk. Adam Cobb, and he kind of I met him randomly in LA, and we just became good friends. And then him and I FaceTimed, and he's like helping me like sculpt my TED Talk, which was just also kind of the same thing that he just was like so invested in. He's a life coach. He does this for celebrities all the time, and he's like helping me kind of create that TED Talk. So mine is going to end up being on my real mantra, my Chase Joy mantra, and it's going to be about living a life of joy. Living life of, and the comparison is really living a life of joy compared to living a life seeking happiness, and how they're different.
Awesome.
Stay tuned.
Very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And so this is like a good time, I guess, to probably, well, first of all, like start talking about your blog. You started blogging, just correct me if I'm wrong, like 2012 was it, or 2013?
Yeah, I've like had a few blogs. I've had a couple. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the one on your website, anyway. So I was reading all of that, which is so cool. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so nice, like, actually just reading people's stories and like what they go through, and it's just nice when it's honest and it's authentic and genuine, and you're sharing cool information, what you eat, what your thoughts are, what your goals are. It's nice for people to follow, you know what I mean? And it kind of gives them inspiration to do that too. So it's really great that you started that.
Okay.
So maybe we can talk about like sort of why you started it, and then we can go into the article, which is crazy, like how viral it went, the one that you wrote, and I think it's a really poignant topic and one worth going a bit deeper into, because I have probably the exact same feelings as you that you wrote.
Oh, good.
And, and I do think about it so much too as well. But we can go into that once you sort of mention about it.
Yeah. So I've actually had a few. I started a blog, I guess, in college because I had to for a class. Then I blogged while I was studying abroad, which was great because then I could now look back on those memories and have kind of a thread through it. And then I guess this blog was when I became slightly more professional in my fitness career, and I had my specific fitness Instagram, had my fitness blog, and my thread through my Instagram and everything I put out there is, how am I adding value to someone else, and whether that's value through an inspirational quote or Transformation Tuesday or a recipe or whatever. It was kind of what can I do to offer something to somebody else? Because if it's just about me, it's not going anywhere. It's not helping anybody. It's purposeless. So, and the thing was, though, I've never been an active blogger. Like you probably noticed, it was like once every like month or a couple months. Like it was never, I didn't have a solid following. It just was, it was there. So that's why this virality thing was insane, because I had maybe 2,000 or 3,000 Instagram followers, and then literally maybe 50 to 100 people following my blog. Like it was very small following, and so it was really a testament to the message of and kind of the pertinency of it. So background, I guess this was like a year and a half ago now, August 2016 then. So there were three murders in New England, one in Massachusetts, New York, and Connecticut, I believe, and they were all women, very similar to myself, and they were on runs and in situations I've been in, broad daylight, not doing anything dangerous, and were like brutally murdered while on runs, and it was just first of all horrendous, and then second of all very weird that like they were all isolated incidents, and the media backlash was. Everyone acknowledged it was a horrific event, but then there was a lot of these questions of, oh, what were they wearing? What were they doing? Like what kind of, exactly, like what caused them to, what did they do to like kind of ask this on themselves, which is ridiculous. And obviously no one would ask that of themselves. And so that was a horrific thing. And then as I was, talking to my friends and family back home in North Carolina, they're saying, oh, I'm living in a big city. At the time I was training for a half marathon. So I was doing a lot of runs outside at off hours, early in the morning, late at night. And it's hot in Boston. So I was often wearing shorts and a sports bra or whatever, not for, to get attention, but like purely because it's hot as hell, it's humid, and and like you're trying to get through this run. And so anyways, family and friends saying, hey, maybe you should start running inside, like maybe you should wear something different, maybe you should limit your activities based on what things could happen to you. And it just was like, at that point I heard it so many times, I just got like pissed off, and I was just like, this is not my fault, it was not their fault, and for us to that to be the first trigger that we think of is an issue. So I literally was working from home one day. My roommate was also working from home. We didn't have air conditioning, so we were actually working from a local restaurant, and we're sitting at the bar at the restaurant, and I'm like furiously typing, and she's like looking over at me, and I'm like, my face is red, and I'm like pounding on the keyboard, and she's like, what is happening? And I was like, I'm actually blogging. Like it just was like all this culmination of like energy I just was like putting into this blog post. And I find myself like, I wrote this post and then I'm talking to her about it, and then as we start talking, I realized that was probably something, she's one of my dearest friends here, and I was like, it's probably something we'd actually never talked about was times we had been harassed and situations we were in. And as I was in the blog post, I call out specific stories that had happened to me within just a few months. And I'm sharing them with her, and I realized I hadn't shared them with her when they happened. And she's sharing stories with me that I had like been there for some of them, or friends that had happened. And the more we started talking, the more both of us were getting pissed off, and realized that, number one, this is something that we don't talk about as women. Like we don't talk about with each other as much, and we don't support, and we don't get through it. We just kind of take it and hold it in. And then number two, like my 1, 2, 3 stories, she's got just as many, if not more, and then has stories of friends or whatever. And so it just was like, this is an issue.
Can we just go into what the actual issue is, just so that listeners can know what we're talking about?
Right. Specifically, I was speaking specifically about street harassment. So street harassment is the catcalling, the yelling, the following, is basically any form of harassment that's not physical. So I had called out specific stories of when I was working out outside at a park, broad daylight, and this kid, literal kid, was probably 5 or 6 years younger than me, came over and was like saying blatant profanity at me and what he wanted to like do to me. And I had my headphones on, and I thought he was like asking me a question. I mean, he was a kid, like asking me a question. I took it out and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And like put my headphone in, like ran away. And then like other times where I was like followed into stores and like yelled at across the street, or I mean, there's lots of yelling, and specifically when I'm in like fitness situations, when I was on runs, things like that. And so it's that kind of street harassment. And, and she's telling me stories about times it's happened in bars where she's been grabbed, where people have been grabbed on trains because the trains get so compact in there. So it's just any kind of that harassment. Specifically, we were talking about men harassing women, and kind of the idea of why do they feel like they have the audacity to do so without any kind of reprimation. Like there was no, like, my gut reaction was to walk away and to remove myself from the situation. And there was just, they say it with so much confidence and so much audacity that it's like, what the hell? Like that's an issue. If you feel like you can openly talk to me in the middle of public like that, like that's an issue. Right. So I wrote this post, and the post is called "What Do We Deserve?" And it's, I'm describing myself. I describe these 3 specific stories I've been harassed. And then at the end, I kind of pose these series of questions of, what was I doing to deserve this? Times where I was harassed in a gym, which is supposed to be a safe spot, and kind of just pose these general questions of, as women, what do we deserve? And is this it? And I wrote the post. I sat on it because I don't post many punchy things. And this felt like a little much for me. And I sat on it and went about my day. And at the end of the night, I was like, I still feel this way. I think it needs to be said. I'm going to post it. Right. So I post it. I share it on my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. And I go to bed, and I wake up the next morning and I check my post, and there's like 25,000 views. And I was like,
wow,
how just happened? Exactly. I'm like, literally. And
that's crazy.
First thing, so this was a Thursday night, first thing Friday morning, I have a slew of comments. I have my first troll. So an internet troll, someone that is just like harassing you. And I'd never had a troll before. And I was freaking out. Like his comment name, because you can name yourself anything, was Timbuktu. And he just would like refute anything I said, and then would refute any other comments other people said. So if anyone else said something positive, he was he was all over it. And this had been live for 12 hours. And I'm freaking out. So I'm at work, and I'm like trying to be semi-normal, and this thing's like going crazy, and I'm getting tons of emails, and I'm having this troll, and I call our like content director in our company was one of my mentors, Susie. She's still wonderful, and still I talk to her often. I know she's like written for Comedy Central, and she's like blogged a lot, and she's just been in this world a lot longer. And so I knew she'd have some perspective. And I call her, and I'm like, okay, number 1, I wrote this blog post. You should know about it because it's kind of taking off. And number 2, like I had this troll. What do I do? And she was like, if you have a troll, that means you said something worth saying. You said something of value. Leave it. Let him go on there, and like good on you. And I was like, okay, cool. Let it ride. I was like, all right, we'll let it ride. And then, and then it was like 2 weeks of a hurricane. I had my first request for a radio interview from Up Rocks Friday. I had my first request for people wanting to exclusively post my content, which I said no to. And then it became this free for all. So everyone from time.com posted it. My face was on time.com's Twitter account, which was absurd. Like Refinery 29, all the women's, self.com, Shape magazine, like all the women supporting ones posted it, which was incredible. It took off, and it was purely organic. Like there was no celebrity that posted it. It was nothing like that. It was literally people on Facebook sharing it and sharing it and sharing it, and them sharing their stories. And it was going like full circle. People that like from all worlds of parts of my life were like, oh, so-and-so shared it from so-and-so. Like it was it was weird. My roommate was actually in Eastern Europe at the time on a trip. And the last thing she said before she left was like, okay, like don't do anything too exciting, like while I'm gone. And she's plane ride home, and this like random guy beside her is like on his Facebook, and my face is on his Facebook. And she's like, wait a minute, what? Like, how do you know my roommate? He's like, I don't, this blog post or whatever. And she comes home and she's like, you did a viral blog post? Oh God. It was like, it was a whole insane thing. But
you know, Erin, I mean, in and of itself, I guess the fact that it went viral, first of all, I'd love to hear how you felt during that initial phase. Like, but, you know, the fact that it went viral, obviously the content was good and it was well written, which it is. But also there's an issue there, clearly, as well. Like, that's obviously the underlying thing there. And, you know, Gareth and I have discussed this a lot as well. And it's, specifically at the gym as well, you know, we've discussed those kind of the scenarios where it can be really subtle and often not so subtle. But is this clearly an issue that many people, or women specifically now, go through? And why do women, or let's put it this way, like, why do men feel that it's okay to do that? Do you think it's just sort of over time upbringings, or do women not stand up for themselves enough when it does happen, or what makes it seem okay for some men to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the funny thing is, like, the men asking these questions and the men that have been paying attention and apologizing aren't the men doing these things. It's such a small percentage. It's like the bad apple, right? So it's the bad apple kind of ruining it for everybody. And I feel like it has to be some power trip. Like, it has to be some power they think they have, or some power they wish they had and feel like they need to overexert themselves to show. And it's like a hard question to answer. And I always, briefly mentioned before, is like, I always think of myself first of removing myself from the situation rather than reacting, because also when it happens, you don't expect it. Like, no matter how many times you've been harassed, you never expect it's gonna happen again, and you never expect what situation is gonna happen again. So I always kind of approach, like, for example, one of the stories I shared in the post, I think it was in the blog post, was I was going running one day, like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I run past a guy that's like directing traffic in front of a parking garage on a very busy street. And he like pauses the car for me to like run by, and I like wave and thank him. And he like yells after me after this. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, what? Like, there's nothing I could have done to avoid that situation. And I was trying to be like polite and respectful that he was presumably doing something nice for me. And so, you know, you don't ever think to react, right? It's almost like it happens so quickly that you're just like, what the hell? And then sometimes it happens in situations that feel compromising. So if I react, you know, what danger am I putting myself in? Is it worth it? And for me, it never is, right? So instead of quote unquote standing up for myself, like me removing myself from the situation and whatever, being the bigger person or being the safer person is the only way I think that makes sense for me to kind of do that. And it's funny, there's been a couple like viral YouTube videos of women, or this girl that would react every time. So if a guy was like, oh, like, where are you going? She'll be like, grocery store, come with me. Or like, she'll like play it and make it funny. And I was like, that's a funny thing. But I was like, that could get dangerous very quickly. Right. And so you don't know, most of the time, I mean, every time in that video, like, the men were so caught off guard. They were like, what? Ew, I actually don't want anything to do with you. Right. So why say anything to begin with? So I think it's hard. I think it's hard to say why people do it. It has to be some type of a power trip. It has to be some needing to feel.
I think it can be like a few things, actually. Like, when I think about it, it could just be a maturity thing. You know, you just have young guys, or not even young guys, just old guys that are probably immature, and that's just the way they are. Unfortunately, you know, they kind of maybe haven't grown up. But I've been sort of toying with this sort of thing quite a bit recently, actually. Not just related to harassment, but just to how and why people react, and especially like when it's the more sort of negative side of things, or angry side of things. I often think maybe it's an insecurity within that person. You know, they're reacting in like a harsh way because for some reason within themselves they're insecure and they don't know how to kind of deal with it, or it's their way of expressing the insecurity. But yeah, I mean, who really knows? It could be different for all different all different people.
Right. And I mean, going back and talking about, you know, family dynamics and how we were raised, I'm sure that's a huge part of it. With people that are raised with love and trust and respect, often that's how they treat other people. And if people come from broken homes or mismatched homes, then they don't have that same base, and they weren't treated that way. So they don't see the need to treat other people that way too. And then the harder part of, when it happens, there's a huge, and I think this was where the conversation really started to go for my post, was there's a huge issue of men not stopping other men. And so there's only so much women can really do in the situation. And it really needs to be a men's issue, right? So how are, dads teaching sons? How are peers helping and supporting each other and helping that be a positive environment and community that they're creating? And, there's a whole issue of, locker room talk. And there's just so many places that kind of breed that extra masculinity that becomes so negative towards women, when that just doesn't even make sense. Because, when it comes down to it, every man out here has got a mom, right? A mom brought him into this world. He's got a mother or a sister, an aunt or something that love and support him. It's ridiculous that that's how they choose to, then kind of turn it around on the other women in their lives.
Yeah, it's very true. I think men often have this, the boys, with the boys now.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and it actually is very, very, it's insidious, and it's actually not okay. And I guess it starts when you're when you're young, you're trying to impress your mates and what have you, and you don't want to. And I guess that's where parenting and schools and that kind of thing have to be really strict with that at an early age. I saw there was an article here in Australia with a private school, and with the way these, at the end of school year 12, they have these yearbooks and things, and some of the stuff in there was just shocking. And it's the same, that mentality of we're just with the boys, it's okay now.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes, I suppose, okay in any scenario. And I think you really nailed it there, is that men have to call other men out on that as well. Even if there's no woman around, that's the thing, and say, hey, what the hell, man, it's not okay.
It's not cool.
So it's a good bit of advice, I reckon, for people to take, is let us all be aware of that kind of talk around, even when there's not necessarily someone specific involved. You have to sort of just be aware of that,
Yeah, exactly.
So what has the aftermath of that been? Have you had it's been a year and a half later now. Do you still get people asking you stuff about the post, and have you still had to sort of interact with it a bit? And
some. When it happened, it was a 2-week whirlwind when it happened, and it was, I was having a hard time working. I had so many requests for interviews and pictures and whatever, which was awesome. And then Runner's World. So it's interesting because the Me Too movement is obviously very hot and present and alive right now, but it was not then. So it was this wasn't even it wasn't even necessarily relevant to what was going on in the larger area, which was so interesting. But so based on kind of momentum from the 3 women that were murdered, Runner's World magazine decided to do this deep dive into street harassment, specifically with runners, at the same time. So they were actually going through this 3 or 4 month long process to interview different people and do tons of different statistics and pull data to create this December issue that was about street harassment on women. So it was actually all very pertinent. So I was in that issue, which was really interesting, and then that kind of kept some of that momentum going. And then this past May, there was randomly another resurgence of the article. So when it went viral the first time, it hit almost 1 million views those 2 weeks, which is absurd. Yeah. I think it's hit it's hit 100,000 shares on Facebook. It's crazy. And then it's been reposted in so many other publications. It's way more than 1 million now. People that have read, millions have read this, which is also it gives you that whole idea of what you say matters. You just think you have such a little voice, and you don't know who's reading, you don't know who's out there. You have an impact, and use your voice, use your impact, which was just the biggest life lesson I could have ever learned in the biggest way. But yeah, so there's a resurgence. There was another 25,000 views in May, had this bit of a spike, which was, I have no idea where that came from. And then every once in a while I'll get a call from a reporter or something. There was another running magazine that actually just called me last week for an interview. And yeah, so there's some of that stuff that happens, but a lot of it is I'll meet somebody and they'll say, you don't know me, but I've read your blog article. Like that I get a lot, which is like so humbling and so absurd. So that's been really interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And do these publications or whatever websites, whatever, like reach out to, do they want to pay you or anything, or they just literally like, can we share your article and ask you some questions?
Yeah. So huge learning curve on that as well. So when it first happened, I can't remember which one, if it was like mine, but somebody wanted to pay me, like they offered me like $100 to post it on their site exclusively and no one else could share it. And I was like, this just seems ridiculous, right? Like, I don't need your $100. That's like a little bit offensive. And number two, like, if people want to read it, like the message is more important than my name being attached to the message. So like share it. Right. And about a week into the craziness, I had a friend that I went to school with, that she was a big blogger, and she was like a real blogger and had like monetized her site and everything. And she was like, hi, you don't have any ads on your site. Your Instagram isn't even linked to your site. Like, we need to fix your site ASAP. You're missing so much opportunity on this side of it. I didn't care about that. I didn't know, but I was like, oh my gosh. So she's like, you could have made thousands of dollars by that post. And I was like, obviously not the point. But there's like all these little things like that I kind of started to learn in it too, is that like and being in the fitness world too and working for yourself, you have to realize like your time, what you bring to the world, like you need to be compensated in some way for that. And so, yeah, nothing big really ended up coming from it. I actually never put ads on my site. I felt like that wasn't where I was going with it. So that didn't happen, but yeah.
It's still a big learning curve in terms of, like running a business, running a social media, all of those kinds of things. So there's loads of lessons you've taken from that aspect, I can imagine. Geez.
100%. Yeah. People love to give you free stuff just for publicity. And you realize like, I don't need your publicity or your free stuff. You need me more than I need you, And so that happens.
What would you have done differently if you say you knew that blog post was going to go, your next blog post is going to go viral? What would you do differently?
Maybe maybe ads on my site, because that doesn't hurt anybody to make a little money from it too, right? I didn't have my Instagram linked before. I've now have my Instagram linked to it, because the Instagram is really what I use more than my blog anyways. I also just after that, I had launched an online training business. And so I had a lot of people ask about that. So to kind of take that viewership and then use it to bring it into my world to kind of expand that community is something I've done a little bit of a better job about. So I feel like I've kind of implemented some of the things that I learned from, which was good.
In preparation for your next viral blog post.
Maybe.
And your
we'll
TED
see.
Talk.
Next time I get pissed off one afternoon, who knows what's coming out.
Cool. So just to kind of move on a little bit from there, I'm not sure if it happened before or after, but 2016, I think you had like quite a fun year, and you explored Europe because it was just the right thing to do. I think you'd also like split up with your boyfriend at the time, and I guess you needed a break from that. And I was dating this guy at the time who was wonderful, and the world thought we were supposed to be together. Just wasn't my human, which is totally fine. And I literally had this like waking up moment where I was just like, this isn't my life. Like, this isn't what I want. And ended it there. But he was half Swiss. So his family lives in Geneva. And so we were actually supposed to be in Geneva for his cousin's wedding, like 3 days later. So I had this ticket that was taking me to Dublin and then Geneva. And I just had this moment of like, I was like, okay, I'm not going, broke up, I'm not going. And my roommates were like, you should just go to Europe. And I was like, what? I can't go by myself. And they were like, why not? And this is weird. I had the Airbnb that we had gotten in Dublin, I had booked, and I ended up writing her this message, this woman, Sarah. And I was like, hey, like my boyfriend and I just broke up. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go yet, but like, can I get a refund? Like, what my options, why I make this decision? And she was like, number one, like I have a hard policy. I'm sorry, there's no refunds, whatever. But she's like, just put this in perspective. Like, I was in the exact same situation 4 years ago. I had broken up with my boyfriend and was supposed to be going to the US with him, ended up going by myself, and had this like eye-opening experience where I like
kind of like learned who I was. And so she's like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you need. Sometimes you need your friends and family, but she's like, I'm going to really encourage you. Like, maybe this is a sign you just need to go. Like, it was the best thing I could have done. Like, maybe this is what you need to do. And I was like,
wow,
what?
that's cool, eh?
That's so cool.
I was like, universe coming together. And I was like, done, I'm going. Like, I'm just going. Yeah. And she like wrote, when I checked in, she had this like lovely like letter for me that I actually have still saved in my journal. And she was just like, I hope this is basically like, this is the journey of your lifetime. Like, I just hope this is everything you want it to be. And Dublin ended up being amazing. And then that's when I went to London and got to see some old friends in London. And then I went to Barcelona because I'd never been to Barcelona before. And then I went to Paris because the company I was working for at the time was based in Paris. And so I went and worked from Paris for like 10 days. And one of my other coworkers came out and stayed with me for a few days. And so, yeah, I had this like 3-week long excursion in Europe and was like, this is amazing. Like, breakup trips should just be a thing. Like, you're not even a thing anymore. So it was incredible.
That's so cool. And did you get to meet the lady at all in person?
No, I never got to meet her. They were gone the whole time, so they just left me the keys. But yeah, I like wrote her back, and it was just so funny. It just was like, this is, the universe sends you signs. It's up to you to read them. And this was just like, totally. I can't walk away from this. I have to go.
Yeah.
Once again, it's so cool to have a little, take the time to do something like that for someone else.
Yeah.
It's just, she didn't have to do that. And it's just such a nice thing to have done.
Yeah.
And it's just a cool thing to think of when, in any scenario you could think of, you could just take a little bit of effort and make some kind of human connection with someone, even if you don't know each other. And it just makes it like, it can really influence someone else's life. And here we are talking about it. And it's just like really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny that like, I feel like Europeans and especially Australians like love to travel and can travel by themselves, and it's not a big deal for them. In the US, I feel like it's a big deal. Like, people don't travel by themselves, and it's almost like kind of frowned upon, I guess, to travel by yourself. Like, oh, you can't find anyone to go with you, when that's not the point of it.
Yeah.
So it's actually wonderful. Like, I met when you go by, you guys have probably traveled by yourselves before, but it's like when you go with other people, you're closed off because you're in your group. When you're by yourself, you're looking for interaction, you're looking for engagement. So it kind of just happens a little more organically. And I met some awesome people. Like, I went to when I was in Dublin, I went to the Guinness factory, of course, and poured my pint. It was at my pint at like the 7th floor sky view.
Yeah.
And one of the bartenders like kind of took pity on me because I was like by myself, and we got to like chatting the whole time. And he ended up like inviting me out with his friends that night, and we ended up like staying in touch. And he actually ended up moving to New York City and like asked me for like recommendations. I was like, we've actually like stayed in contact, which is just funny because I just happened to be having a beer at the same time he was working at Guinness, and that just happened like time after time after time, which is just, it's just awesome.
Yeah, it is.
And if you didn't step out of your comfort zone just a little bit and put yourself in that environment or scenario, you never experienced some of that, which is so cool, which is so amazing about travel,
Yeah, it also gives you that sense of like independence of like, I'm in a world where I don't know anything, right? And in Barcelona, didn't know the language, didn't know anything, and can still like survive, if not thrive, in that environment. Like, exactly, you're like, I'm fine, right? The rest of this means nothing. Like, it's just a cool and enlightening experience. So
yeah, totally. Sure. It's because you're like putting yourself like in an uncomfortable situation in a way because you're there by yourself. But it just makes you grow, you know what I mean? And I actually love traveling by myself. You do, you are forced to meet people, and you do make great bonds and friendships that you wouldn't if you, like you said, if you were in that group, because you'd probably just stay speaking to your mates.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it also gives you it makes you kind of like sit with yourself, because I feel like when you're in your like routine, your environment, you're like stimulated by so much, and you're going, and then when you're in a new country and you're by yourself, and like me, didn't have Wi-Fi, like you have to like you're with yourself, right? So it's you and your thoughts and your feelings, and you kind of have this like I figured out I wasn't that sad about the breakup, right? Like I was okay. Like you just kind of can like sit with like the raw human side of you, and you have to sit with whatever that ends up being, and then you kind of get to know yourself in a whole another way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how is life like these days for you? Because it's kind of really taken off by the sounds of it. You've You still, I think you said you'd still do work for a company, but you've also got your own fitness business going now as well. That's really awesome. They're starting to take off. I've seen some pictures of you. I think this week, like you were on a billboard in Hong Kong or Singapore or something. It's like, what?
Yeah.
How cool is that? So yeah,
I feel the same way.
Yeah, I know exactly. What was the journey there for you?
Crazy. So, okay, so a few things. So going back to the blog post, so this producer from Reebok, Reebok is based here in Boston, found the article, found my Instagram from there, and then ended up reaching out to me to hire me for one of their brand shoots. And their brand shoots are like the big campaigns they put together. So I ended up getting hired for that. When I was there on the set, not only did I meet now was one of my very best friends and like my my life mentor I actually mentioned before, Daisy, but all the other models there were with this agency called SLU that's based on the West Coast, and they actually saw me in like, Instagram stories or whatever and reached out to me and signed me. So got a modeling agency through this, which I wasn't even necessarily trying to do. So the modeling world's been like a funny one to kind of maneuver, and something that like I'm not actively pursuing. So when it happens, it's just cool, and it's only fitness modeling. So it's all very, you're working with other like athletes and people that are like, the best in their field and are really incredible people. And so that's been fun. You get to travel to cool places. I was in, San Diego for a week for that New Balance shoot. I did another New Balance shoot where it was for a local event, a rowing event, and my face was all over one of the most popular restaurants on Newberry Street, which is like the most popular shopping district. And so like all my friends in Boston were like taking selfies with my face, and I was like, how did this even happen? So right. So that's been like a weird, just like cool add-on, right? So fitness modeling, one part of what I do. So after that blog post went viral, I was working with the company I was working for got bought by Nokia, and my role just changed, and I ended up leaving and kind of had this idea of, I can do what I'm doing for them, like on my own. I think I can do it the same and make the same, if not more money. But ultimately just kind of have my own schedule and get to, work with who I wanted to work with. So, ended up leaving my job last February, like a year ago, February, started eBay Consulting, which was exciting. And with that launched my online training program. So I realized that through like this blog posting, kind of the thread was always about really empowering women. And so even back in high school, we had to do a senior project, and I chose to do my senior project on Krav Maga, the Israeli combat, but it's Krav Maga, like they make it like a civilian self-defense. And the basis of Krav Maga is essentially like the more conditioned you are, the stronger you are, like the better chance you have of getting away in any situation, right? So not only the technical elements of it, but just the general conditioning. So that always sat with me. And so for me, it was all about like, how can I help just women feel more confident and stronger and more empowered? And if I can help them do that in this fitness way that I know how, maybe similar to how it worked for me, they can take this strength the physical strength they learned in the gym and take that to the rest of their world and be stronger humans and better wives and partners and women's activists and whatever else. And so that was kind of the literal transition that I was aiming for. And so I created this 12-week online training program. And it was like a concierge program, and that like I was there with them the whole step of the way. And so we launched that program. That was my sister's huge help. She designed it, was a huge advocate for it. And then and I teach classes. That's kind of been part of the thread. And then the consulting piece was I was help companies on whatever kind of projects they were looking for. So one of the gyms I teach at, Everybody Fights, was opening in New York City. And so they hired me to help them with some of the corporate communications and the pre-sale work there. So that's kind of the world I moved into. So I had these like 4 different avenues of things I was doing. And that's how I could kind of rationalize it in my mind of like, I have 4 sets of income, right? If one goes away or 2 goes away, I can still pay my rent. I can still make my bills. So you still have to be I was very practical in that part. It wasn't like, I quit my job and I'm not going to go be a fitness star. Like that's not, you know what I mean? I feel like on people on Instagram, that's what they think happens all the time. And that's just not the reality of it. There's a lot more grunt work that goes into it. So, so that's kind of what I launched into, not knowing where that was going to go. I never wanted to own my own business. I just didn't feel connected to another company. And it felt like I was like kind of walking out of a bad relationship and wasn't ready to kind of trust a new one. So could kind of trust myself and rebuild and go from there. So I guess that's where ASICS came into play. So that's who I work for now. I can't even just say running company now, like running, fitness, a little bit of lifestyle based in Japan. And the running's kind of the bread and butter, and their mission, their ASICS, it's actually Latin, but it stands for sound mind, sound body. So it was all kind of about, your movement and how that kind of like, connects you back to who you are, and which I thought was a really interesting thing. So they pitched this project to me as a consultant. They wanted to hire me as a consultant to, they had this idea for an app, and they were like, we want to basically bring a group fitness class kind of to the masses. So how can we bring that same energy, that same feel, that same great workout to the people through audio classes? And someone, literally the senior vice president of marketing, had been to one of my classes, heard my name through other people as they were looking for someone for this position, reached out, asked if we could get coffee, and was that morning, she's like, I'm going to bring our CEO. And I was like, what the heck? So we get coffee, and they're just kind of talking about this idea and asking about how, what I would do and how I'd manage it and what people are looking for. And I'd had that online training practice of how to work with people in that kind of digital way. So anyways, we went through this, and at the end of it, they were like, well, we really love for you to like run this portion of the project. Like, are you interested? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm interested. And then it kind of snowballed from there. And then I actually went, which was a big part for me, I actually went in-house with them in October. So kind of hung up my consulting hat. And now I'm full-time. I'm full-time with ASICS now.
Cool.
Wow. So the moral of the story is, when someone says to you, do you want to go for coffee? You always say yes.
You always say yes. That's how all good things happen to me, is through coffee.
Wow, that is freaking awesome. You know what I love about that story, Erin, is it's so real. Like, I love the fact that you mentioned that a lot of people just think you have a job and then you transition out of that job, and now suddenly you're an online entrepreneur. And, maybe for some people it is that sort of thing. But the reality is sometimes it's a bit more complicated than that. And, you can still be working and still be building something else and do both.
Right.
And, there's so many options for people out there, and different ratios of income and amounts of work on the one versus the other. But there's no one way to do these things, and just keep all your options open, which is really cool. So, one thing that's coming up in the next few weeks is, you obviously mentioned a bit earlier, is doing more talking and sort of more public appearances. So how does that factor into where you're at the moment in terms of your work and all that?
Yeah, so I just did. It's a little bit a part of my job now. So the app is that I work for now is called ASICS Studio, and we launched in December. And so a lot of what we're doing now is obviously trying to promote the app. So I'm the head trainer on the app, and then I manage and recruit all the trainers and all the content within the app. So the content side's like my little baby, which has been great. And so the LA portion is, we have LA trainers now that we're pulling into the app. So that's why I get to spend a lot of time out there, which is wonderful. So I got to So the interesting thing is, ASICS is known for a running company. You think ASICS, everyone thinks those like crazy bright colored running sneakers. They're great sneakers. But they don't think anything beyond that. So ASICS is really trying to kind of reform the brand to be a fitness brand, to be a lifestyle brand, to be more than just a running brand. So as they're dabbling into this fitness space, this was kind of the first, big push to be in the fitness space, along with some of their apparel, but realizing like they don't have maybe any other, if not many more other fitness people in there. So like, I'm the only like trainer in ASICS. And so lucky that our ASICS digital office is based here in Boston, but like, they're talking about bigger partnerships with companies in Paris and everywhere. And they need a fitness component to it. And they're pulling me into it because I'm the only asset they have right now, which is incredible. Right. So ASICS kind of giving me that platform. It's a $4 billion company is absurd. And that's something that I just feel so grateful for, which is crazy. And then there's other things like I was in New York last week for an event because ASICS was partnering with this influencer and it was kind of like a launch party for like the fitness world. And it was like a fitness, it's kind of like a fitness job networking platform. And ASIC's store was hosting it. And so they're like, well, it'd be great to have somebody from ASIC sit on the panel. And so my name got brought up and they're like, well, it makes sense for Erin to be on it, whatever. I go to this panel. I'm not only the youngest one on the panel, probably one of the youngest people in the room. And I'm sitting next to an Olympian track star, this guy who's a celebrity trainer, like #1 best-selling author, and then this woman that runs social media campaigns for like all of the top, Fortune 500 companies in the world, and then me. And I'm like, what am I like? What is happening?
That's
right?
a great
So, like,
selfie for your Instagram.
it was great. It was a great selfie. The people loved. It's just been really like it's saying yes a lot, which I think can be scary sometimes. And then it's I'm just so grateful that ASICS believes in me and trusts me and can kind of also give me these opportunities to represent the brand, but also very much be myself. Like they benefit from who I am and me personally as a brand, and I obviously benefit from having ASICS behind me. So like that's kind of where some of these doors are opening up, which is nice.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing these stories. It's just like, you've opened yourself up and you're saying yes, and the world is sort of paying you back nicely now, which is brilliant.
Yeah. And the funny thing, I get asked a lot about my like career because it's not a conventional way I've gotten here, which is totally fine. And I think that's the new normal. But I think people, especially women, have a hard time saying like, I earned this and I deserve to be here. And I feel like that's one of the things that I kind of keep when I'm having these talks, and that's what I kind of keep talking about, is it's not luck. Like I feel so fortunate for the position I'm in, but I know like it didn't fall in my lap, right? There were millions of decisions I had to make to get to where I am. And this was the path that it led me to. It also could have led me in a totally different path and maybe a bigger path, or who knows. Yeah. But ultimately, like, your success is your success. I mean, there's a lot of people that help you get there, but you're ultimately the one in charge of where you end up. So wherever that is, whether you're happy where you are, you're not happy where you are, like, you're the one that needs to be owning those decisions and kind of being proactive with the decisions that you have to make.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's always like a thousand. Yeah. And like you say as well, I like that aspect of it's okay to have that once you've done that. If you put that effort in, and and then then own that and be like, wow, I'm proud of myself and my achievements and what have you, which is nice as well. Like, people are often very quick to be like, oh well, like, don't be too proud about this or that. But yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah,
it's very cool.
Exactly, own it. Big deal.
I think there's like 1,000 little mini forks in the road every day, and every time you make those little decisions, you're choosing a little fork in the road, and then that always helps me to think in that way. Is like, is it that way or that way? And you can just make that decision every time, and at the end of the day, you end up where you are now.
Totally, I know. Big decisions, small decisions. Like, I almost never posted that blog article. I almost never posted it. I almost didn't work from home that day. Like, there was just, little things like that you don't think of. If I hadn't worked from home, I would have been in an office doing something else and not distracted on my blog, So it's just funny. Life is, just funny.
Yeah, it's cool.
Love it.
It's great. It's great. Cool. So yeah, Erin, just before we wrap up, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, to follow you, to reach out?
Yeah, Instagram is my main jam. So find me on Instagram, eBailey_fitness. I also respond to all of my messages. So if people do have messages, feel free to direct message me. I'll get back to you. Twitter's less fun, Erin K. Bailey with 2 Y's at the end. And those are kind of my 2 main things. So
cool stuff.
Find me there.
That's great. Cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So, we just, first of all, would just like to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's just really nice just been listening to your story, and you told it with such a big smile, such a great amount of energy, and also just like so much honesty and just being super normal. And it's for us.
Thank you.
For us, that's been great. But also, you're a really inspiring lady. And
thank you.
Just through literally being honest and talking about everyday things, I can imagine that you are also an inspiration and mentor for a lot of other ladies too. And I'm sure they look up to you, and that you provide them with a lot of value, and
I hope so.
Make them want to also be sort of better versions of themselves and speak openly and honestly about things. And it's also opened up our eyes as guys, that we have a big responsibility to play in terms of sort of keeping each other in line, as well as calling each other out when it comes to specific situations, especially when you're not treating women in the way they deserve to be treated. So we just we just had a really great chat to you. Thank you so much.
This has been fun.
We're really happy that Umbe put us in touch with you. So thanks a lot.
Same. Thank y'all so much. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just briefly from my side, I think there's definitely so much value there in terms of just like a happy story, like caring for others. There's so many like community and family like feels coming from this chat, which I really, really dig. And like just the aspect of being empowered and feeling positive for that we can influence our future as individuals, but also like for each other and working together. And I think creating safe spaces for each other for everyone to sort of thrive in. So I just feel like there's just a great message to hear from someone who's influencing a lot of people. It's not just about the look, and that's just a really nice aspect that you bring. So thank you for that, and thanks for taking your time to chat to us today. We've just had the best chat, so we look forward to checking where you're heading in the future. We know it's going to be large and awesome, and we can't wait to check your TED Talk.
I need to hear both of your TED Talks.
Yeah. Thanks.
I love it. Thank y'all so much.
Cool.
Truly, it's been an honor.
That's cool. Thanks a lot. Cool. So.